Well, Elliott Hegan, welcome to the podcast. And like we're just talking about then like head knocks and dealing with CTE and stuff like that. That was something that, yeah, definitely in my career, like I hit my head several times and concussions. And it's one of those things where when you're an athlete, it's just part of the game. But then like you're saying, the flow-on effect of that years later can be terrible. And what were you saying? Because you said that that was something that you worried about when you were playing, and then you went and saw a doctor and the advice they gave you on how to make that better.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me on the podcast, mate. Really appreciate it. So when I was playing, like when you play, any sort of contact sport, like head knocks are a part of it. It's unavoidable pretty much. And I sustained, probably too many. I got a really bad one when I was 21, where I got post-concussion syndrome, where it was all the symptoms, all the effects of a concussion without actually having the concussion. It lasted 6 months. There's no cure. There's no remedy. Saw the doctors and they're like, look, you just got to wait it out. And it was terrible. Like, honestly, like sometimes it lasts 2 weeks, a month. Mine lasted 6 months. Had to be in a dark room. Got vertigo, was vomiting, couldn't train, couldn't eat. Like sleep was bad. Like it was a terrible time, and I was 21 and I just started playing like professional rugby, and I had a doctor saying, look, mate, might be better off if you look for another career. And I was like, mate, I've just started my career. Like I'm not, so I brushed it off, and I kept getting head knocks ever since. Not as bad as that one, but any sort of little head knock felt like a massive one. And I saw my personality change a fair bit gradually over, say, my 20s, where my mood swings, I was getting very irritated at little things. I would lose my temper. I was getting very frustrated. Like I could just see me going downwards.
Would you pick up on that in the moment or afterwards, reflecting on how you've treated a situation?
Never in the moment. Never. That was my big issue, my awareness in the moment was just not there. I would always reflect later on and be like, when I'm calmed down and maybe a couple of days later, I would always be like, why did I react like that? And in a better head state, I was like, that was a non-issue. That was not a big deal. And I just made it such a big deal for no reason. Or someone else would bring it up to me and like, you're a bit of a fuckwit. Like you're a bit of a dick then. And I was like, oh, was I? And then I made me sort of reevaluate what had happened. And then I was sort of like the information in what you know now about CTE started being very prominent, like when I was sort of 26, 27 years old, and I was like, all these athletes were sort of coming out with, in their 30s, 40s, 50s and stuff like that, and I was actually getting really worried. And then I was like, I had a few episodes, like sort of breakdowns, mental health episodes where I would just lose it. Complete anger, frustration. Jordan, my partner, she witnessed about 3 of them, and on the third one, she said to me, like, I think I came back after a couple of days of just being completely angry, and then I would get angry at myself for getting angry, so it was just like a spiral. And I walked back into the house, and she sat me down, and she was bawling her eyes out, and she was like, "Look, I love you, but if you want to start a family, like I can't afford you to be like this, to be this person. If we're going to have kids, I'm setting boundaries, and that's a standard that I'm keeping, and you can't be like this. So you either change or, we got to go our separate ways. And if you want to change, I'm going to be here for you. I'm going to support you, but you've got to stop avoiding and all these things and all these non-issues that you're thinking aren't big deals. You got to go and seek answers." And I knew that for years. Back in my head, I was always like, fuck, I got to figure out what's going on here. And that was like the biggest push for me to go like figure it out. So I went down to the Macquarie University down in Sydney, where I found out a lot of like ex-players were going down there to get their head scans and stuff like that. And CT is a thing where, they're still learning more about it and that sort of thing. And it's something that you don't find out until when you've got, early set dementia or all those things, or when you die, they cut your brain open and they go, yeah, you've got it. So I was going down there thinking like, what can I do in the meantime? Like I'm still fit, still young. What can I do in the meantime to prevent any sort of long-term damage that I'm really worried about? And as we did, before we started this podcast, like the breathwork thing was something that, was a bit of a woo-woo thing back in the day, or even still now, it's still sort of looked upon as something that is a little bit, off with the fairies or something. But I went down to see a specialist. She was like, look, we can give you drugs for your migraines, we can give you headaches, antidepressants for your mood swings and stuff like that. But look, the best thing I can possibly give you, the best advice I could possibly give you is breath work. Breath work daily is the best thing for your brain in the long run, not just getting over traumatic brain injuries, but just in general for people to do breath work daily. And I walked away and I was so surprised that a doctor said that. She was like, we can give you all the drugs in the world, but I honestly reckon just breath work daily will make the biggest difference. And even when we just did that then, I was like getting a little bit emotional. I was just like, why am I getting emotional doing this? But there is something in it. Like, I feel great. I've changed so much in my life now that all my focus, and Jordan said it the other day. I don't know. I think we were watching a movie or listening to a podcast, or something came up, and I asked her, do I put you first? Because I feel like I'm sort of juggling a fair few things in my life. And I said, do you feel like I put you first? And she paused and she looked at me and she goes, yeah, you put me first after yourself. And I was like, instantly I was like, oh, fuck, do I not?
That's not a bad thing though.
Yeah. And I was like instantly going, oh fuck, do I not put you first? She goes, no. That's what it needs to be. That's what it should be. You need to put yourself first. And after yourself, I feel like you put me first. And I was like, oh, like and she goes, that's great that you do that, because you need to look after yourself. You need to put yourself first, because like if you're not the best version of yourself, then, you're not going to show up for me. You're not going to show up for the relationship. And yeah, so that goes back to sort of my mindset now is all about like, how can I be the best version of myself? How can I look after myself? Because there's a voice at the back of me going, I think there's this little voice going, I think you've done irreversible damage playing on when you got told that you probably shouldn't have.
And you felt like you pushed through more so than you should have.
You should have, yeah. Like going back, like when I tell people that I got post-concussion syndrome and I tell them how bad that 6 months was, their first reaction is like, what the hell? Like, why did you keep playing? And I think about it now, how terrible it was. And I go, why did I keep playing? That sounds, right now, that sounds ludicrous. I would never do that. But at the time, I'm like...
You're a young athlete, man. You have tunnel vision to your goal and you will put your body through anything to get that goal. And it's not till you look back and you go, man, what was I doing?
Yeah, 100%.
Like I got unlucky. I had a mechanical in 2018. I just had one of the best results I ever had in my career. I got a third place. The race after it, feeling confident, feeling good. Had my tire blow off my rim doing about 60 k's an hour and KO'd myself. I think I was out for about 2 minutes. And I raced the weekend after. Now, I was trying to race that same weekend. And I was like, I'm fine. I'm good. Like when you got a concussion, you think you're fine. I did a concussion test the next Thursday, I think it was. And I passed it, but apparently it wasn't very good. But looking back, I don't know how my team let me ride. I don't know how my friends let me ride, but it's like, I wasn't taking no for an answer. I was like coming off such a good result that I'm like, if I don't race my whole career, like my whole season's going to be wrecked. But it's that mindset of an athlete where it's like, we just need to like keep doing it. And I look back now, I'm like, man, that's so dangerous.
Yeah. Well, we don't know what we know now about head knocks. Like, especially in footy, it's like almost a badge of honor. Like you get knocked out. Yeah, just bring it back on. It's just a knockout.
Yeah.
You just hit your head, you wake up again. But it's just like, what we know now is just like, it goes far deep and then just like you knock your head and you wake up again. The repercussions later on in life, is what we know now is like how damaging that can actually be. And like, I love now that the precautions that rugby is going down. Like I know a lot of like old school tragic footy players are like, oh, it's gone soft. And it's just like, mate, like what would you rather? Like would you rather play good, for 10 years and be called soft, but then when you stop playing footy, you've got a life after footy, or be, labelled as this tough nut, like I can do anything, or head knocks are all good, but you get to 50 and you can't remember anything.
Yeah.
Like rugby's such a like professional sport, such a small part of your life, and people are willing to sacrifice their whole life for like a fraction of success or fame or something like that. Like there's so much more to me than just Elliott the footy player, and now I know that. Whereas before it was just like all I am is a rugby player.
Well, that's when your identity gets so entangled into what you do, and I feel like for athletes you get so praised on what you do, and if you haven't actually had something before that, Like I wasn't good at anything. I wasn't good at school. I wasn't good at music. I wasn't good at nothing. Then I found something, got really good at it, like I'm sure you did as well. And then people praise you for it. You get money for it. You get traveled around for it, like all these things. And you're like, if I lose that, who am I outside of that? Is that something you had to really focus on when you obviously said you had these spurts of anger and you were kind of a bit all over the place, and then you found out who Elliott was? Did it all become a bit better after that?
Yeah, that was a long journey though. Like, you know, I hated myself for years. Like, I clung to rugby because I was like, it was almost like an ego thing. Because like now I don't feel like a loser, you know, and outside of footy, I felt like a loser. So it was almost like this thing where.
Why do you think you felt like a loser?
I think it goes back to like I wasn't good at anything. Nothing came natural or anything but sport. Like I could always lean on sport. Like I wasn't smart. Like I actually thought I had learning difficulties at school. Like I just didn't pick up anything. Like all the assignments, all the exams, like studying was just not good for me. Like I was always struggling and it was always stressful. I just remember like school just being such a stressful time in my life, and all my mates were like, you know, getting good grades and they were understanding it quickly. And I was like, I don't get that. Like why don't I get that? But as soon as I play sport, as soon as I stepped on the footy field, I was just like, I felt at home. I felt peace. Like I felt how my mates felt. I was like, Elliott, how can you understand what's going on there? And I was like, I don't know. It just comes natural to me. And it was like my place of like, oh, now I don't feel like an outcast, or now no one's judging me for being stupid or for being dumb. Now it's like, oh, we need Elliott because he's good at sport or he's good at rugby. Now he's like, you know, he can fit in with us. He can be a part of the popular people because he's good at sport. And I was just like, oh, now I fit in. And now I clung to that through all my life because I was like, well, this is how I fit in. This is like my place in the world. And it got to a point where I was like, I was so scared of trying new things. So I didn't want to suck at something. I didn't want to fail. And when you try new things, you know, you're always going to, you know, 9 times out of 10, you're going to suck, you're going to fail. So that fear of failing was like, stopped me from trying new things and actually like venturing outside of rugby. And especially when you're young, you just think, I'm going to be a rugby player forever. You know, 30 years old is so far down the track that I'm not even going to think about it. I'll sort out my life later on. And it's not only until you get to like 26, 27 and you realize I've actually got no other skill set outside of playing rugby. And then I think that's when like my headspace really spiraled down, was like when I could tell and feel that the sort of rugby was coming to an end. That's when it started getting really bad, because I was like, who am I now? You know, when people always used to say, how's footy going? Like on the weekends or seeing family and friends, it's like, how's footy going? That's always the chat. And now I was dreading that chat because they'd be like, how's footy going? I'm like, actually not playing footy anymore. And like, what are you doing? I'm like, fuck, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing. And that was a huge period of my life where it lasted for about 5 or 6 years, where I was just like trying to figure out who I am outside of footy, while also dealing with my own mental health struggles, my own traumas that I've been pushed down since I was, you know, 13, 14, 15 years old, that I like neglected. And, you know, it's you know, I had 360 on the podcast, and he talked about like from the ages of 20 to 30 was just a write-off for him. Like it was just no emotional, spiritual or physical growth. And it was honestly, I felt the exact same thing. Like I woke up at 30 and I was like, I felt like a kid. I felt like a little boy, like dealing with all these things, all these issues, figuring out who I am, what kind of man I want to be, and figuring out all these, you know, my values and stuff at 30 years old. You know, I felt like a little boy, and I was just like, oh man, like I better sort my shit out. Like I was really afraid of not fulfilling my potential as a human, because I was always too afraid to like dig deeper and figure out like why I am the way that I am. And that's something that I'm still growing through now, but every day, like every day I'm trying to figure out like who I am, what makes me tick. And it talked about that awareness. Like I didn't have that awareness at the time. It was always afterwards. But every time now, I'm so blessed to have that awareness now. When something triggers me, it's not an instant reaction. It's not an instant emotional reaction. It's just like I sit with it and go, all right, why am I angry with that? What's something that I haven't healed in me that makes me angry at that? And that's the beautiful thing that I'm at on now, where every day I'm trying to get a little bit better. Every day I'm trying to figure out like what makes me tick. And that moment sitting with Jordan when she gave me the ultimatum, like that's the scariest part of it, because I almost threw it all away because I was too immature, too afraid, too scared to actually like figure out all those little things I've been pushed down for so long.
And she's not telling you to change, but she's saying, if you don't, I won't be here. It's like, it's your choice. If you want.
The ball's in my court. Yeah. It always was. And she knew that I was avoiding it. She knew I was procrastinating. She knew that, you know, I needed to make the change. She just gave me a little push.
Yeah. You said a thing there about how you were distracting yourself with other things, with rugby, with this identity you built. I had a friend and her father passed away, and a couple of years afterwards, she was just really down, and I like kind of was like, "What's up? What's happening? You don't seem yourself." And she said, it just stuck with me. She said, "I think I've been distracting myself with everything else I could than feeling what I needed to feel." Because she was really good at school, really good at sports, really good at everything. And it's like, if you don't actually address that issue, you don't mourn for the person who passed away, you don't deal with the trauma that you've gone through, it's like, it's always just there. Like you don't just get over it because time's passed if you haven't actually put in any work to solve what that problem has been. But it's like, okay, well, I can get back into rugby, I can get back into social networks, I can do this. And you're like, this thing in your back of your mind is always there, just waiting for like the right opportunity to come up. And you'll be at a low point, and then suddenly now it's everything. Now it's like, okay, now I'm at a low for something else, and the shit that I haven't dealt with is now coming up as well. And they're just getting double teamed by trauma and shitty situations where you're like, fuck, I got to deal with all of this now. Did you feel like when Jordan said that to you, did you feel like that was a rock bottom, or did you feel like there was a rock bottom before getting to that point and that was just a push out of it?
Nah, that definitely wasn't rock bottom. I think that was coming out of rock bottom, to be honest with you. That was just more pushing in the right direction. Like if you're going on to my rock bottom, it would definitely be the time where earlier on in my life I didn't have a remedy for the noise in my head. You know, rugby on a Saturday was like my remedy. It was like every time on a Saturday for 80 minutes, like no silence. Oh, sorry, all silence, no noise. Like it was just the most peaceful time of my life. I was like, this is amazing. Like nothing else matters. And then when I stopped playing footy, it was like all the noise would come back again. You know, I didn't know how to silence it. Like I didn't know what to do. And then in the footy scene, it's just like parties and the drugs, the alcohol. And I remember like I was never sort of into drugs earlier on, but I remember trying it maybe when I was about 20, 21 years old, and it was the most euphoric feeling like in the entire world. Like I remember taking it and everything just went silent, and people like get on drugs and they go to raves or they go to parties, and I'll get on drugs and sit here like me and you and just sit here and be like, oh. Like that's what it felt like. I was like, yes, like a release, or I can fully relax now. And that's what drugs was for me. I could just fully relax and have no noise in my head. And
what was the noise sounding like?
Yeah, the noise was more, there was a repetitive question like, who are you? And then a lot of it was like, you're going to amount to nothing. It was all doubting myself. Like you'll never be anything. You're a loser. You'll never be anything. You're not good enough. Everyone else thinks that too. You know, I'm projecting other people's opinions on myself too, and thinking like, if footy doesn't go anywhere, you're actually going to be a loser. So I put so much pressure on myself to play and perform, because I was like, in the back of my head, I go, well, if I don't have it, like, I'm nothing. I'm no one. And that was like the constant, you know, and that wasn't true from anyone. You know, I'm just projecting that in my own head. And that was the constant for my whole life, was like trying to silence those. You know, I've always had a terrible relationship with myself, always. You know, look back at it now, I've never spoke nicely about myself. Never. And it's just quite a sad thing that like every time I left a conversation with someone, I would walk away and I would analyze what I said. And I would be like, what the fuck did you say that for? They're probably going to think you're a fucking loser. You just ruined that. Why would they ever want to be friends with you? every conversation, everything I'd say, I would always be like hypercritical and be like, why did you say that for? In my own head, just be like, you're a fucking idiot. You're trying to be funny, you're not funny. Like every conversation, I was just hyper analyzing everything, and that noise just grew. Like if I didn't know how to silence it, and if you don't know how to silence it, like it would just keep building up, and getting worse, getting louder and louder. And when I started taking drugs, it was like compounding that, because you're trying to be a professional athlete, but you're pretty much a borderline drug addict. You know, you're taking drugs 3-4 days a week to silence the noise in your head, but at the same time you're trying to be a professional athlete. You know, and that got worse and worse, because it's like, look at you, you're a complete fraud, you're a loser. Like people are asking you about how footy's going, but and I'm putting on a brave face saying, yeah, it's all sweet, but really like you're playing like shit and you're taking drugs and you're drinking during the week. You know, what a complete fraud that is. I'm lying to everyone. And then, you know, I had fast forward like 3 or 4 years living sort of interstate and around Australia doing that. And I had a girlfriend at the time. You know, we were together for about 5 years, and I kept it pretty like quiet from her, like tried to like hide it as best as I could. And I remember having like a breaking point where I was like, she's the problem. She's the issue. I need to break up with her. So I broke up with her. We've been together for 5 years. I broke up with her and couldn't give her a reason. She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, no, it's just not working. Like, I don't love you anymore. Like all this sort of stuff. Couldn't give her a reason for breaking up with her. And like broke her heart. And I was like, yep, that's got to be it. And like, she ended up moving overseas, and sort of I moved out, and then all of a sudden, like I still feel the same thing. I'm like, fuck, that's not it. Right. And I was just trying to like find all these external things for how I'm feeling, trying to fix all these external things, look outwards. And I was still feeling the same inside, and I was like too afraid to look inside, because I was like, oh, there's some shit in there that I suppressed that I don't want to go through, and it can't be it. That can't be it. It's all these external things. Like rugby, I got injured and sort of missed out on a contract because I was injured, and I was injured because I wasn't doing my recovery. I wasn't being a professional athlete. I was drinking. I was, you know, not looking after myself, and then I started like, instead of blaming myself for that injury, which was the correct thing to do, I started blaming like, that coach doesn't like me. That coach hates me. That's why I didn't get the contract. Again, like blaming external things. And then I was like, well, I remember like going out, and I was going out a lot. And I remember thinking, well, I've just missed out on a contract. I'm injured. Like, I think, you know, the best years are behind me. Like, what the fuck am I going to do? And then I was thinking like, oh man, like I've just broken up with my girlfriend, like for no reason either. Like I've just broken her heart for no reason. Couldn't even tell her, couldn't explain to her. So immature, no like emotional connection and maturity at all. And then I remember like going out, and I would always like have a large amount of drugs on me. And, you know, I remember coming home and just thinking to myself, like, what's the point? Like what's my future? I don't have a future. You know, if I told myself if I couldn't play rugby anymore, I was just pretty much going to end my life. And I was in that dark space, and it's really frightening how like one little thought driving home from footy training, like life probably would be a little bit easier if I killed myself. You know, all that worry would be gone. And then it was like a 3-second thought, and then all of a sudden, like you keep driving, you're like, oh yeah, well, what did I think that for? And just sort of brush it off, and then all of a sudden, like the next day, you have the same thought, and then next month you're having the same thought, and then you start thinking, how would I do it? You know, how would I do it? And I was thinking to myself, how would I do it that my mum and dad could still say goodbye to me? They could find my body, they could, you know, say goodbye to me. That's what was my thought, and I was driving home from trainings for weeks, for months, going in my list in my head, I shouldn't do it like that way. I shouldn't do it like that way. You know, and doing like a checklist of the ways that I should do it. And I remember like going out one night and just being like completely, just a complete rock bottom. Like I just didn't want to be around anymore. I didn't see a future. Felt completely alone, even though I wasn't. I had so much friends and family around. I just isolated myself big time. I pushed everyone away. Everyone that ever loved me or cared about me, girlfriends, friends, pretty much pushed them all away. You know, I really isolated myself. And I remember like coming home from one night and having like a handful of pills and just thinking like, I didn't have a note or anything like that. I didn't write anything down. But I remember just thinking like, if it kills me, I can at least be at peace. And if it doesn't, I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. Right. And I remember just like swallowing it And then like waking up the next day and I was like pretty much like pissed myself and like had vomit all everywhere. And I was just like, had the biggest headache in the world. And I was just so like dazed. And I was like, what day is it? Like I didn't know what was going on. And I sort of started coming to and I was just like full denied it. Like just went in denial. I was just like, that didn't happen. That wasn't me. Like that didn't happen at all. And I was so good at pretending and I was so good at lying to myself and lying to other people that I truly believed it was like I was in denial. Like I just truly believed that I didn't just do that. And it wasn't until like I did a road trip down to Sydney that same year. Am I hitting that? Am I? Road trip that same year and again, like thought everything was all good, put this facade on, this mask on. Everyone was like, Elliott's, yeah, you know, one of the boys having a good time, but really I was just like dead inside. And I remember like having like a proper like 3-4 day bender down to Sydney and then coming back to Brisbane and couldn't sleep. Like I just fried my nervous system. Like I could not sleep. My body was like jolting me awake. And I checked myself into hospital and I was like maybe midnight, 1 a.m, checking myself into hospital, got no money. I broke, like spending all my money on drugs and alcohol. I checked myself into hospital, told the nurse, like I've just had a big week, you know, down to Sydney for New Year's and or what's in your system, told them what's in my system. And they were like looking at me because it's, you know, 1 a.m. They're like, this kid, like I've had 3 or 4 days of no sleep. So I would have looked and smelt terrible. Had to call my mum and dad to pay for the visit because I had no money. So they're like, why are you in hospital at 1 a.m? You know, I had to lie to them. But I remember laying in like the hospital bed and they were giving me like IV and bottles of, they gave me like a carton of bottled water because they're like, you were severely dehydrated. And I remember like calling mum and dad and it was a feeling like they knew what was happening. They knew that I knew that they knew, but we never said it. But their tone and their voice was like, we need to talk about it, but we never did at that period in time. But I remember like their tone and their voice asking me if I'm okay, and I was like, yeah, I'm okay. And there was like a pause because I knew that they knew that I wasn't okay. And then I was like, I'll call you in the morning. Like everything will be good. And I remember like the chaplain coming from the hospital. And he was like doing the rounds and he was like, sat down with me and he's just like, everything all good at home? And I'm like, yeah, everything's all good. He's like, everything good with you? And I was like, yeah, everything's all good. And I was so good at like brushing, like just lying to people. And he just looked dead and straight in my eyes and he was like, is everything all good? And I couldn't look people in the eye. I was always sort of looking around and stuff like that. And he looked me in the eye and he fucking knew straight away, like everything was not good. Like everything was not okay. And he's just like, you know, like we can talk about it. And I kept like, I was so young and immature and I was just like, no, everything's sweet. Like I just had a big weekend, like leave me alone, like get out of my face. But I remember like, I'll never forget like the look in his eyes because he was like, he could see straight through the bullshit. I think that was like that period in time, like me laying there, I think that was my rock bottom because I remember like people go to rehab, people go to therapists and that sort of thing to get over certain like addictions or, you know, suicide attempts and that sort of thing. And I remember laying there, getting off the phone with mum and dad and thinking like, you know, they came over from New Zealand at like when they were 18 and 19, 20 years old, no money, like absolutely no money. And they raised 3 boys, worked full time for like the same job for like 30 years. You know, and I remember laying there just thinking they've done so much for me. They've gone to all my footy trainings. They've been so present in my life. I've always felt safe and loved at home. And how was I going to repay them? This is what I was going to do. I was going to party and take all these drugs and you know, end my life because I was too afraid to figure out who I am. I was too afraid to like dig deeper. Really, that's how I was going to repay them. And I felt terrible. And like, you know, the road that I was going down, they were going to have to bury their son one day. That was the outcome. So I remember laying there and it was like a switch flicked in my head, like instantly, like the next day I was like, nah, like there was so much shame and guilt and embarrassment. I was just like, nah, I'm not doing it to mum and dad. Like that is stupid. That is ridiculous. Like I'm going to change everything that's going on. And that was definitely my rock bottom. And that was the very start of my journey in terms of like getting to know who I am, healing the things that needed to heal and actually figuring out who I am. Like it was some people figure it out early in life. Other people figure it out later in life. Dad always says the Hegan boys, we like to learn the hard way, and that was definitely it for me. But that wasn't never like the end of the journey. Like I was 27. I'm 33 now, 34 in a couple of weeks. Like, you know, that was still a while ago, you know, 8 years ago, but I'm still on that journey now. And it's, even though it's like my rock bottom, right, it's still probably the proudest moment, because at the same time, like, I made that call to fix myself, to make change in my life. Like, yeah, it was terrible. And I still like these sorts of conversations actually like, are very uncomfortable for me. You know, even though I've got a podcast and I talk to other guests, like sharing my story is actually very, very uncomfortable, because it's bringing up old emotions and old feelings. And when I tell the story, it's sort of like I'm going back in time and thinking about how I was at that time, and it's super uncomfortable. Like to be honest with you, I don't enjoy it, but I also understand that it's super healthy for me to talk about it. It's peeling back another layer of shame. It's peeling back another layer of guilt or embarrassment that I have around that time in my life. So every time I do talk about it, it's afterwards I do feel a little bit lighter. But yeah, I can't remember what your question was.
How did you feel the first time you ever brought it up and talked about it publicly?
The first time I talked about it was with a psychologist. I moved back to the sunny coast, and I was like, nah, getting out of the scene, changing my environment. I need to talk to someone about it, because I've never talked to anyone about it before. And I saw a psychologist, and we sat down for like, it would have been like about 8 or 9 sessions, but the first 3 sessions, she didn't say anything. We sat down like this, and she was like, what's going on? And I just word vomited like I just have been. And then an hour was up, and she was just like, that's your hour, I'll see you next week. And like pretty much like kicked me out. And I was like, oh, yeah, righto then. I'll see you next week. But it was like, I remember leaving, I still remember this day leaving that first session, and then like the weight of the world off my shoulders, and I could fully breathe. Like I felt like I wasn't even breathing properly this whole time. I felt like there was all this pressure on my chest, and I could finally do that and actually have air come in my lungs. And I was just like, holy crap, how good does that feel? Finally, like all this suppressed stuff that was built up for so long. It was one of the best feelings ever. And I left going, I can't wait to go back in there next week, because there's more in there. And she would always be like, what else? What else have you got? And I'm like, yeah, all right, there's more in there. And that's what I try to tell to people is like, I was so afraid to talk about it with my friends and family, because I didn't want them to treat me any differently. I didn't want any sympathy. And when you're telling someone this sort of stuff, it's natural for them to feel, you know, sympathy or feel sorry or to worry about you. I didn't want people to worry about me. I didn't want people to change how they were about me. And I knew that if I told people that loved me, they would always be like, we got to watch out for Elliott. Like he's not right. But it was so refreshing to go to someone that I had no connection to whatsoever, that I knew they wouldn't lose any sleep over me, and to just treat me like it's a client. They'll be like, yeah, you got an hour, speak your truth, get back out, and we'll see you again in another hour. So that was the beginning where I was like, maybe talking about it isn't such a bad thing. Maybe I'm not so different. And like that reassurance from seeing a psychologist was like, yeah, we see this all the time. Yeah. And I'm like, oh shit, you're not special. I'm sorry. But like that's what
you want to hear.
That's what I want to hear.
You don't want to feel special.
No.
People will treat you like that. They give you the puppy dog eyes and poor you and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, fuck, I just want to be.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, we're all going through hard shit. I just didn't deal with it the best that I could. But then when you do open up and you realize the flow-on effect from sharing something like that, and realizing that there are thousands of people out there that are all dealing with the exact same thing, but everyone's shut off in their own little world and they don't want to share it, and they're open because they're like, well, I don't want to be vulnerable, because if I'm vulnerable and you're not, or you shut me down, it's going to get worse. So I'm just going to be quiet, which is even worse. And it's just this constant thing of people struggling alone.
100%. And it's just like that. You get into a snowball effect where it's just like you almost project that everyone's going to be the outcome's going to be worse than what it actually is. And then you realize, like, when you start sort of actually talking about it with people, everyone's just like, I feel the same way. And you're like, oh, like this big stigma and this big, like, what you project it's going to be in your life is actually not that at all.
No.
It's so much more relatable than people think. And I think that period of my life where I actually that was so important to have those chats with that psychologist and actually understand, like, and she put so many, like, connecting the dots with so many things in my life and actually putting words to emotions, because I was terrible at, like, feeling something and then understanding what that emotion is, connecting, like, emotions to words and actually going, what am I feeling? Like, what is anxiety? Like, why do I feel like that? And educating me around what I'm feeling and understanding that that's okay, and also giving me tips and ways to, like, regulate my own emotions. That was, like, one of the biggest things, was, like, when I would feel a certain way that I didn't want to feel, that's when I would lose it, because I was like, I'm not in control of my feelings. I'm not in control. Why am I not in control for? And then I would just sort of wig me out a little bit. And understanding that these emotions are going to come and go, it's your ability to cope with them. That's the key. So instead of fighting everything, just understanding that they're going to come up, and these are tools and ways to regulate your own emotions. And, like, that was, like, the biggest key for me now that I still use, is, like, understanding that we're all going to feel anger. Like, we're all going to get frustrated at some things, and it's okay. Whereas before I would reject it. I'd be like, why am I angry? Like, I honestly thought I remember, like, thinking when I was, like, 15 and 16, I honestly thought that a peaceful and happy life was not having any problems. How naive is that, to think that you can go through your whole life and not have any problems? So, like, when problems arose, I would freak out, because I'm like, why have I not got a happy and peaceful life? Like, why do I keep having problems for? Like, and it would honestly, like, wig me out massively, and I would spiral out of control. And realizing it now, there's this, like, a peaceful and happy life has got nothing to do with not having problems. It's how you cope with those problems. How you cope with the struggle. Like, when something bad happens, like, how do you view that? How do you view that situation? Like, is it an opportunity to grow, or is it an opportunity for you to be a victim?
I heard this quote the other day that Alex Volkanovski said after he won the title. He said, "Adversity is a privilege," and I just wanted to add to that. And rock bottom is a good place to push off. So it's that thing, and that's even wording it as it's a problem. It's like, it's a challenge. It's like, okay, new challenge. How do I overcome that challenge, and what will I get out of overcoming that challenge? And I think it's so easy to look at things as, this is hard, so I don't want to do it. But being an athlete, like, why did you want to become an athlete? Because it was hard, because it was challenging, because it was fun, because I would do something and get better and beat someone in a game or become the best version of me. It's like, you don't go into it because it's easy. And if it was easy, you wouldn't want to do it. So it's like this whole idea that we constantly try and avoid challenges or hard situations. And then you like, how long would you sit on a beach before you're like, this is boring, I want to go do something that's hard? And for me, that was always, what's the next thing that can challenge me that I can actually overcome? Like, I think there's a difference between, like, having a problem, like your family might have, someone's got cancer in your family. Like, yes, that is a real problem, but it's like, okay, well, can you spend more time with them before they go? How can you appreciate a moment more with them? Like, there's things that you can take from situations that aren't ideal and still get good stuff out of them, instead of just looking at them like, poor me, I'm a fucking victim, boo-hoo, the world's out to get me, why does it hate me? Like, where do you get with going down that path? It's like, you get stuck in this same point, and then everyone else that's with you will just keep on going forward while you're just stuck there. It's like, oh, why does this happen to me? Like you said before, it's like, when you got to that point where it's like, what's the point? And I've felt that before, when there is, you don't even want to get better. Like, there's not even motivation to get better. It's like, you know that you can do something to get better, be like, what's the point? Like, it's like that.
That's a scary place when you don't even care.
It's a scary, scary place. I had it twice. The most recent time was after I had my injury with my neck. And I remember laying in the floor in my bedroom, just laying there. And I was like, I should be going to rehab, or I should be doing something, or I should be surrounding myself with people. And again, it's like, you self-isolate yourself because you don't want to be this burden. And I remember just laying there like, what's the point of any of this? And it's like, how many people think that daily? Like, when I was talking to 360 as well, we talked about, like, the suicide rates in Australia. It's like 70% of men, and it's like, I think 3,000 something people a year. So it's like, how many people along the way are thinking, what's the point? And then obviously actually checking out. So But like you said, man, it's like that point of rock bottom is such a good place because that's where you will make that change. That's where you will go. Like you said, it's the best and worst spot to be in because you're at the bottom, but you're also like, okay, well, now I'm going to make real change. Because like I've been in relationships, but they're not bad. They're not great either. And I've been in jobs that aren't bad. They're not great either. And you just go along with it for this long amount of time. And then you finally get out of it. You're like, what the fuck was I doing that for? Like, that's what I was doing.
You finally wake up. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the frog in the hot water. It's like you throw in boiling water, it jumps out, you heat it up slowly, it will be in there until it dies. Yeah. And I think we all live in just this kind of like lukewarm water that's getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And none of us want to jump out because it's like, oh, it's not that bad.
Yeah, it's not that bad. It's the safe zone. It's a safe space. It's just like, people are so afraid of change. I think change is what scares people the most. And that's like when you're in a safe space and you go, oh, it's not that bad. You sort of just ride it out.
Yeah.
You know? And that's what I did. Like I would always like reassure myself that it wasn't that bad, even though it was terrible, right? I was so afraid of change. And I was always like, well, it's not that bad. Like I'm still living life. I've still got a job. I'm still paying stuff. I'd always like justify the reasons why I shouldn't change. And then it's only now when I'm in such a good headspace now and I look back to that person now, I'm like, how did you even have friends? How did you even like socialize with people? How did your parents even love you? Like, how did your brothers love you? Like, I question it because I think back, you would have been a complete arsehole, but you still had people around you. You know, how did you even function? How did you even go to work? How did you talk to people? Like, you were just a zombie, you know? It's crazy to think about now, actually.
Why do you think the biggest reason that you didn't want to change? Was it just
fear, man? Yeah, I was so scared. I was so scared of like my own feelings. I was so scared of like what was going to come up. I was, you know, like you talked about, like we work so hard to play sport and you put so much effort into it, yet, you know, I wasn't putting any effort into myself. You know, I was just terrified of my emotions. Even from a young kid, like I just didn't understand my emotions. I didn't understand why I was feeling the way that I was feeling. And I remember earlier on in my life just thinking, having like a thought saying like, I need to sort something out. But I also remember thinking to myself, that is the scariest thing ever, to actually like dig deep. And I chat to people now that like have going through the same thing or a similar situation and they go, yeah, it's scary. I go, yeah, I know. It's the scariest thing ever. But I also tell them it is the best thing ever. It is honestly the best thing ever. It's one of the scariest things ever to go through and actually figure out who you are and what makes you tick and get to the bottom of these emotions. But it's honestly the best thing ever at the same time.
Is that a big reason why you did lean towards the podcast and starting the podcast? Because you obviously had these conversations with the psychologist first and obviously opened up a lot of, I guess, who you are as yourself. And then from that, did you feel like you needed to kind of share that more?
Yeah, I felt like I always loved chatting to people, and I felt like from my own experiences chatting about my feelings, I understood how beneficial that is. I was like, this is amazing. Like I need to do this more often. Like we need to have more chats. Like even some of my mates, I was like, we need to have more deeper chats. Like I was one of those guys. And and the podcast sort of came about where I work out in the mines and I love having these sort of these deep chats, and a lot of my friends and family have gone through some pretty heavy things in their life that we've never spoken about, which is unusual, that some of your best mates in your world, your mum and dad and stuff, you've never had conversations that you should have had by now. The motivation behind it was this guy called Joe Williams. He's an NRL ex-NRL player, played for the Rabbitohs and the Panthers and Bulldogs, and he won a few world titles in boxing and stuff. He's an Aboriginal fella, and he's my hero. He's my idol in this space. I heard him talk on a podcast. I think it was Mark Boris, the Straight Talk podcast, and I was listening to that for the very first time, and he was telling his story, right? And no shit, it was word for word exactly how I felt. Like what he went through with playing footy and high level footy and leaning on drugs and alcohol and sort of going through suicide attempts, and how he felt emotionally. Like I couldn't up until that point articulate my story, articulate how I was feeling. And for the very first time, I heard someone word for word say my story. And I remember sitting in their car just going, what's going on? Like, this is mental. Like, someone else has gone through the same thing that I've gone through, the same exact feelings. And I was thinking, holy crap, maybe there's more people out there that have gone through that. And then when I started asking sort of mates and family members, like, do you guys want to chat about a few things? And they were like, yeah, like, almost the start of it, convincing people to come on pretty much, because obviously that's it can be a pretty confronting thing at the time, to get in there with some cameras and talk about some pretty heavy things. But I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and someone asked me, have you always been confident in conversation? And the answer is no. Like, I don't think I've told you this, but I actually suffer from really bad social anxiety, like really, really bad. Not as bad as it once was. I'm sort of getting a little bit better at coping with it, but my coping mechanism for my social anxiety would be chatting to people. So I would, like, if I'm going to a birthday party, if I'm going to an event, a wedding, just going out, I would absolutely freak out. Like, I'd be sweating. I was like worried about what am I going to speak? What am I going to talk to? Who's going to be there? Is anyone going to talk to me? Am I going to say something stupid? Like, they're the thoughts in my head. And even getting there, I'd be like all nervous and jittery and stuff like that. And the anxiety would be there. And what I learned earlier on was, like, if I engage in a conversation with someone, it instantly gets me out of my own head, stops thinking about myself, and I have to pay attention because I'm listening to what you're saying. I'm asking you questions, and within 5 minutes, no social anxiety, and now I'm in an engaging conversation. So, like, my ability to talk to someone was born out of social anxiety and fearing, like, maybe fearing not being enough, not feeling worthy enough, not want to be friends with me.
But what's enough?
Well, that's a good question. Because right now I do feel enough.
But why? And how is that any different than then?
Because I'm not worried about being understood. I'm not worried about being liked. I'm not worried about you having an opinion of me. I'm not worried about
you can see this is all your perception of how you see yourself, and it doesn't matter if like, what's enough. Someone meeting you for the first time, trying to work out what's enough for you, but you're going,
yeah, good question. Yeah. I don't know.
Because I think I have a close friend, same thing, really outgoing at a party, really anxious, and he won't go to events and stuff like that. I'm like, dude, why are you always bailing on events?
Yeah.
So I'm too anxious, man, because he feels like he has to live up to this persona that he's created for himself, which no one else cares about. It's like you're fighting this battle in your own head of, like, am I going to be funny enough? Am I going to be charming enough? Am I going to be this version of enough that I don't even know what that is in other people's minds? It's like, if you went up and it's like, what's enough out of me that would make you want to talk to me now? And he's like, man, just have a normal fucking conversation with me, which is what you're good at anyway.
Yeah.
So it's like their version of enough is your baseline to how you're escaping your anxiety anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, I get what you're saying. It all comes back to you're saying, like, yeah, I need to be enough. And you say you are enough now, but then you go, well, what is that? And you go, I don't even actually know at the end of the day. But it's like, I think a version, for my opinion anyway, when I feel enough, it's because I feel like I'm being myself. I feel like I'm living to a certain standard. I'm following values. I'm around the right people. Like, I can be me.
That's it. Like, being me. I can finally be me. I used to be so worried at school about fitting in and finding friends that I would be a chameleon. I would find out if that person's popular. I'd find out why they're popular. Oh, they like this type of music. I suddenly like that type of music. You know, they do surfing. Now I surf. Like, I was always changing myself for the trend. What's popular, what people liked, what girls liked. I was like, girls like this sort of thing at the time. I like that sort of thing. Is this how they dress? I'll dress like that. You know, I was constantly changing myself to fit in and have friends and be liked. And I was so worried about that me being enough now is me being genuine and me not caring about how you perceive me. This is me. I'm not going to change myself. I like what I like, and I what I don't like. I know that about myself now. I'm not worried about being anyone else. And for so long, I was constantly changing myself to fit in with my environment. And now, for the first time in my whole entire life, like I'm 33, and I can fully sit here and be like, I actually love myself. I love who I am. I'm not going to change who I am to fit the situation or to try to get friends. Like that's not what I'm about now. And it's like, if you want to be friends with me, if you like me for me, then that's great. But for so long, like, people were liking me for this version that I was giving them, this mask, this fake Elliott.
It wasn't you.
It wasn't me.
So you're being anxious because of.
And I was being anxious this whole time because I was just never showing my true self at all, So that's what's enough for me now, that I can sit across from you, and actually for the first time in such a, my entire life, like this period now when I'm since turning 30, it's like I felt like I can finally live my life on my own terms. And it's a beautiful thing that I can finally do it now, that I've gone through that. I don't think I'll be able to sit here with you today if I actually didn't go through all that. So I don't look back at I used to resent old Elliott. I used to look back at old Elliott and go, you loser. Like, why were you like that? But now I there's a bit more sympathy and empathy for that Elliott, and I understand, like, yeah, man, like he had to go through that. And I wouldn't be sitting across from you today with a podcast and the love I have for life and the love I have for who I am, but if I didn't go through all that other stuff.
Mm. And I think with that as well, like, you want to share that because like, you heard on a podcast someone else going through a similar thing, and how quickly that can elevate you, and you just cut out a lot of the bullshit because you don't need to go through and feel all that pain. Do you feel now with doing the podcast, because something I definitely suffer from, it's putting yourself out there and having your own opinion and knowing that some stuff will land, some stuff won't, and you are kind of being a bit more vulnerable in the sense of, this is what I think, and if you put your opinion out there, no matter what it is, so many people are going to hate it, people are going to love it, people aren't going to care. Like, that's just how it is. Do you feel that coming back sometimes?
Massively. Yeah, like putting myself out there is something that I've never really done. Like, even this social media world, like, I didn't have social media before the podcast, and obviously getting the podcast, you got to, put the content out there and get on the grind and reply to messages and engage with the audience, because, like, I understand and respect that everyone's going to have a different opinion, and people come from different backgrounds and different upbringings, and I acknowledge that we've all walked a different life, and I understand that, like, I encourage people to have different opinions. I don't want everyone to agree with me, but I'm incredibly sensitive. I didn't know that about me since starting the podcast. Like, I'm doing this, in my eyes, a noble thing with encouraging difficult conversations around your mental health and encouraging people to be themselves. Like, I don't want people to go through life and think that they can't be themselves. But like you said, man, people are going to disagree with you, and people are going to hold strong opinions. And I used to ride the wave of good and bad. So when people would be like, that's a great episode, love it, I'm like, sick, I'm doing something good. Someone else would be like, that's a shit episode, I hate that. And I'm like, oh. So it was just a constant wave up and down. And I realized, like, it was really, like, affecting how I was talking in a podcast, how I was presenting myself. And then it was like, Elliott, you're going back to your own ways again. You're trying to fit in to society. You're trying to fit into the audience. You weren't going to, you stopped being you. I didn't want to, like, upset anyone. So I was just like this boring, mundane person, just trying to, like, tread the line of, like, not good, not bad, anything like that. And I remember, like, we talked about Rick Rubin, the famous music producer, and I read his book, and a chapter in his book is like, the audience comes last. So when he creates a song with an artist, a lot of the artists go, I want to make a hit song. I want to make a song that the audience are going to love. And he's like, you don't know what the audience is going to love. And not only that, you shouldn't care about the audience. The best thing for the audience is to make the best possible thing for you. And I really took that on board as, like, well, this is my art. Like, this is our art form. Like, this is the expression of us. Like, as soon as you start going, oh, we're going to talk about something that the audience is going to love, you don't know what the audience is going to love. And it starts being disingenuine. You can tell straight away that, like, you guys are sort of talking a bit of shit, really, and you're not being genuine yourself. So I had to actually block out the good and the bad. I can't just keep riding the wave of good and just block out the bad. I had to do both. Because otherwise you're sort of like thinking, oh, this is all good or this is all bad. I was like, no, I'm not doing it. I acknowledge it. I see it's there, but it doesn't affect, I try not to let it affect me. I try not to read into it too much and get too high if everyone's loving it, or get too low if everyone's hating it. I look at it and go, if I put it out there, when we release this episode, my success comes from me wanting people to hear it. My success doesn't come from people liking it, or my failure doesn't come from people hating it. My success comes from me being happy enough and proud enough to show it to the world. And whatever comes from that, but I have no control of that. All I have control is in the moment with me and you, and how we present it to the world.
I think I always compare it to just say you hung art on the wall. Just say I painted a picture, I loved it, I'm going to go put it on the wall, hang it in my studio. Someone comes in, don't really like that. You're like, oh, next person comes, I fucking love that. Can I buy it? And you're like, is it a good or bad piece of art? It's like, no, it's a different person's opinion on the thing that you've created. And I think it comes back to like, if you're happy enough to share what you're saying with the world and putting it out there, how it's received kind of doesn't matter. Like, obviously, this is the whole, like, you know, when people like subtle art of not giving a fuck. It's good to give a little bit of a fuck, and it's good to actually listen to the audience, but don't let it steer you down the direction, because I can understand if you say something that hits, if you start opening up about your experience with your when you were being an athlete and how this has helped and things, and people like that, like, lean in a little bit, but don't let that fully control the narrative of who you are and what you need to say. It's such a fine line, because I hate when it's this whole idea, if you do one thing and then you kind of get put in the box of that's the thing you do, and then you can get so attached to that one thing that you don't do anything else. Like you said, even with when you were playing rugby, everyone's like, how's footy? That's, you become this footy guy. Or if you do this other thing, even it's really in anything, man. Like even with the breath work, like it's hard for people to wrap their head around that you can want to go play football, do some breath work. Yeah, I eat healthy. Yeah, I sink some piss on the weekend. Yeah, I go and do, like, it's like you can be all these different things, but it's almost like we live in a world where it's like you have to be just all in on one thing. And I agree that you should be all in if you're trying to grow something or build something, but also like have a life outside of the one thing you do. Like have some downtime, have some other things that interest you. Like I think we can feel like, I felt like with mountain biking, like I was nothing else besides this one sport I did. And then you kind of reach out to the rest of the world and go, oh my God, there's all these other cool things. And it kind of freaks people out, because it's like once you separate yourself from people, you isolate. Because I felt a lot, it's almost not people feeling like you're too good for them, but almost like, why are you doing that? Like, why do you need to do that? Why don't you just do this?
Stick in your lane.
Yeah, stay in your lane. Stay in this normal thing where I'm like, you're this person and you do that. And it's funny. Like, have you ever watched the movie The Dark Knight with Heath Ledger in it? And he talks about when all this bad shit can happen, like soldiers can get blown up and all this, because it's part of the plan. It's like, and then he's like, you try and kill one person, like the mayor, and he's like, people lose their minds. And it's like, as soon as you separate from what the norm is and you put yourself out there and do something crazy, people freak out. And people are like, well, that's not right. Or, hey, I want to go and do something crazy like that, but I have my own issues, my own anxiety, so I won't do it. So then I'll judge you for doing it. And now you can't do it because I can't do it. And it's this fucking
loop of putting like limits on everyone, limits on each other.
So it's like, man, if you enjoy something and it feels right, like do it for that reason. Like I started racing mountain bikes because I had fun riding a bike. You started playing football because you had fun playing football. I started doing podcasts because I just enjoyed chatting with people. Like it was fun. And I think with anything, it's this progression of getting good at something. So you start because it feels good for you. No other reason. You do it for free. You're not getting paid. You get better at it. People admire you. And then someone wants to pay you money for it. And now it's suddenly this mixture of, am I doing it because I enjoy it? Am I doing it because someone pays me? Or am I doing it for the ego of people listening to it? And you see podcasters and they'll do it because you just know, like I started because I actually didn't even start for a podcast. I wanted to do it as like a post-race thing where I was telling people like information about events. And I was like, this is what happened at the race. Nothing to do with telling people stories. It was just that I want to start like a pre-race show, and it just turned into a podcast. And then eventually I think somewhat of ego comes into it, and I listen back to old episodes and I'm just having you on, but I'm asking you questions so then I can tell my story about this thing that I learned. And then the ego takes control of it a little bit, and you go, fuck, am I actually wanting to talk to these people to hear their story? Or am I just waiting to tell my story and using them as a person just to sit here and listen? And you go, man, that's not healthy either. And then it gets a bit more, and then you're like, now people want to pay me, so now I need to put out content because there's money behind it. And it's this weird series of events where you need to kind of go back and go, what was the reason I started this? And if you can work from that place of just, it feels good to do this. I enjoy it, because that's when you're going to get the most out of it as well.
Yeah.
That's when you're going to actually grind at something and feel that emotion. Because the thing I've learned about, it's pretty much you can just take this and put it in the rest of your life. But if you can create emotion out of a conversation or a viral clip or something like that, that's what draws people in. That's what helps people. It's like, how do you create? That's all you are. We're literally, podcasters are just emotion creators. And if you can create emotion and help people, whether it's like fitness, motivation, wherever it is, it's like, if you can do that, people will invest and want more of that. So it's like, how do you create that emotion? I wanted to read you, I got a quote for you for your thing, and it says, "My aim is to give people courage and confidence to have difficult and vulnerable conversations with loved ones, to better understand each other and improve their mental health. It's not easy, and it never will be, but conversations change mindsets."
Sick. Love that.
So that's the goal. It's like to change mindsets, to motivate people, to make people feel something and feel like they can go out and do it themselves.
Yeah, I think people underestimate the power of conversations. I think having a conversation with someone, and my whole goal was, part of it was me and my father was, there was a lot of friction there. I didn't understand him and he didn't understand me. Right? I didn't understand why he was the way that he was. And it wasn't until we had a conversation on the podcast that I now empathize and understand like what he went through as a kid growing up. Like his childhood was so traumatic, and he brought a little bit that into him as a father. And now looking back on it, I understand why he was the way that he was, right? And I'm trying to get these conversations happen because they change your mindsets around each other, situations you can look back on and go, now I get it. Like now I get it. So I'm trying to encourage people to have more difficult and vulnerable conversations with everyone. Like you better understand each other. Like a lot of the time we're walking around each other and we're with family members or with friends, and it's so surface level, right? And no one actually knows what's going on. You know, I've been a victim of that. Like one of my best mates, he went away to the army, deployed overseas, came back. I never asked him how it was. It was all surface level chats. I never asked him at all, and he was struggling with depression, and, he was thinking about killing himself. He's one of my best mates. I never asked him how deployment was. How insensitive is that he's gone over to war and he came back, and I never asked him how it was. I never asked him how he's going with it. I was always like, you watch the footy on the weekend? All that surface level stuff. And I wanted to break that cycle of having surface level conversations. Yeah, like we can always chat about footy and we chat about, little things in life, and I love doing that. But I wanted to give people the courage that if you had to, if you're worried about someone, if you need to have a chat, if you're struggling yourself, I wanted people to listen to the podcast and go, well, Elliott sat down with his dad. Someone, a lot of people sending things going, I would never do that with my dad. I would never do that. I go, why is that? He goes, oh, it would be too awkward. I go, that's why we did it though. I wanted to show you that wasn't, scripted. That was the first time I sat down with my dad and had that conversation with him. I wanted to record it to show people that, yeah, you can do it. Like, I'm not going to say this, part of that's like, it's not easy and it never will be. And it's not. I've had difficult conversations all the time with people, with loved ones, and it's never easy, right? But it's always worth it, At the end of the day, you'll always gain something positive from having a difficult conversation with someone. And, the one with my dad is like the way that our relationship is now after that conversation is life-changing. Like Mum came up to me a couple of days later and was like, what did you say to him? I go, I don't know. Why is that? He goes, he's different. My dad comes up to me and kisses me and hugs me, and like, he tells me how he's feeling. He tells me he's worried about sort of retirement because he's always worked since he was age of 16, and now he's super, super worried about retiring because what's he going to do? He's always been busy.
Who am I?
Yeah, who is he? Like, that's the thing. He retired last week and he's at home now and he's just like up on the roof. He's 70 years old and he's cleaning gutters and I'm like, Dad, get down, mate. But like we're having these deep chats and I'm so happy that he's got someone to talk to as well. Not just Mum, like their relationship's fine, but I feel like it's always nice we can come around to my house and we can talk about deep stuff that he's going through, deep stuff that I'm going through. And he's actually like, you know, I would never have thought about that, say, 10 years ago, that I was going to have that relationship with Dad. It was always going to be arm's lengths away from my dad. But now it's like we have some of the most beautiful chats in the entire world. And I credit to that, sitting down and having those awkward conversations. And I guess the more times you have them, the less awkward it's going to be.
Do you reckon he went from being dad to being a person?
He went from dad to being a mate, a friend. Whereas like before it was like authority figure, scared, do what he says, don't disappoint him, stay in the lines, I'll wash the dishes, like all that sort of stuff, to now he's a mate. Like we joke about things, we tell stories, I'm not afraid to tell him stories of what we got up to as kids. I'm not afraid to like hide things. I used to hide things from him because I was like, I don't want him to know what I've done. I don't want him to, you know, get me in trouble or whatever. I'm like, I'm 33, like dad's not gonna fucking spank me or whatever like that. It's like, so it's gone from like me hiding stuff from him because he was my dad, and he's still my dad, but it's now we're open, like we're buddies, like we're mates, and I've never ever had that relationship with my dad up until now. And it's amazing. Even the mum, like, mum's telling me stories of like them partying back in the day and tells me some stories. I'm like, Mom, I don't think I need to hear that. But I love that relationship now that they don't have to hide stuff. They used to hide stuff from us as kids. And a lot of parents, I know that they try to protect their kids and hide things and try to, you know, give you the sheltered life and protect you and stuff like that. But I love that at a point now with my mum and dad that they just treat us like mates. And it's beautiful. I love it.
Yeah, it's all out there.
Yeah.
You're going to find out eventually.
Exactly.
I think obviously there's a point of when you put it out there, but eventually put it out there. You think I always thought about this as well. Like you have that conversation forever, and I think about that before I would do podcasts with people. At the very start, I was like, hey, if you don't enjoy it, we don't have to put it out. We can just keep it. But you're going to have like a little snippet in time of your life that you can have forever. And I've done a podcast with my dad as well and my brother, and I was like, imagine if my dad passed away tomorrow. I could go listen to a 2-hour podcast of him and me talking and go back to that moment in time. And maybe I'll have grandkids one day or kids of my own or whatever. And it's like, oh, this is me and your great-grandfather chatting when I was 24, starting a podcast, living in this town. Like, you know what I mean? It's
the best thing ever. I think about it a lot, actually.
What do you think the biggest thing you've learnt from doing the podcast has been? Or what's the biggest benefit you've got out of it?
So many things. Like some of the biggest things is initially learning how to communicate with someone isn't just always words, isn't just always verbal. It's body language, it's your tone, like it's your maybe eye contact. It's knowing when to talk and when also knowing when not to talk. How to be a good listener, right? And you went back and you said that sometimes you did at the start where you were just asking questions so you could tell your story.
And waiting to speak.
That was me massively. And I would always, you would say something and it triggered a similar experience. And before you even finish, I'm jumping in, right? And I'll listen back to that. And on a podcast setting, it sounds terrible, right? Because you just so many voices going across each other. And I sat back and went, am I doing that in real life too? Am I doing that with friends and family? Am I cutting people off? Like am I not giving them the time and space to tell their story? Am I always jumping in and trying to give my opinion? So one of the big things it's helped me is like, listen, sit there, pay attention, be in the moment, be present. Don't think about other things going on in your life, because one of the struggles that I really had was being present in the moment. I would always be off worrying about what I said or what I did in the past, worrying about what's coming up in the future. I would, even if we're at a coffee shop, we're at having dinner, I would always be thinking about something else. Where in this setting, it doesn't allow you to do that. You can't afford to do that. So that it makes you be present in the moment and actually communicate and listen to what the other person's saying and respond to them. And I think it can be a dying art of social interaction nowadays with everyone's on iPhones, everyone's on that social media. You know, I've seen kids message each other on phones and they're sitting right across from each other. They're not having that social interaction. Like I'm out at work in the mines and I've got mates with two 23-year-olds and they are full of almost social anxiety, but all the point where they can't be in social settings, but they can't communicate with each other. But they'll prefer if they just message each other, right? Like Elliott, we've grown up with like Snapchats at school, like Instagram, everything's at school. You just message each other, like, and I feel like those awkward conversations that you go through when you're, you know, early teens, those when you're talking to girls, that rejection, all that stuff to build your self-esteem, to build that self-confidence. And when you're in your 20s, they're going through it now. You know, they're going through that phase now. So I think having that, you know, me and Dad would never have sat down, never. Like we talk about it, we joke about it now. Like we would never have sat down at home at the dinner table and had the conversation that we had if it wasn't in the podcast setting with cameras, locked in on a date. Like we booked studio time. Like it would never have happened the way it was. The doors were locked. I had questions, you know, I had questions lined out. He had questions lined out. And I think we had to have it in a setting like this for it to happen. You know?
It's funny. We're talking about when you're waiting to speak. I call it story stacking. And it's like someone has a good story. And for whatever reason, as people will go, well, I have a better story. And before they can even finish what they're saying, you like kind of shit all over what they've said. You're like, oh man, I fucking went fishing the other day, caught this huge cod. And you're like, well, I went fishing, I caught a marlin. And it's like, you kind of shit all over their story because you feel like, I don't know, is that like that social proof or that validation that I'm cool as well, or I'm enough, or I can be a part of this? And yeah, like I think that's something that when you do a podcast and you do actually listen back, because you don't view yourself in third person in the middle of the conversation. And I'll listen back sometimes and I'm like, shut up, Dean, shut up, Dean. And it's painful, man. It's so painful. It's like, give the person their time. Like I think I shifted and eventually came to the point where I'm like, this is your show. I'm just here to get information out, but I don't need to come and, because it's the whole idea, it's like knowledge and wisdom. And I think when you have wisdom, you're more open to pull the answers out of someone else. When you have knowledge, that's like, this is what I know and I'm going to tell you what I know. Where it's like you said with the psychologist, like you know everything you need to figure out here. If you have someone that has wisdom, they will bring that out of you. And then like the audience can see. It's I guess in the way it's being somewhat selfless in a way of actually getting information through someone else, not having to just like put it on them. Because how often if you try and tell someone what to do, they're not going to figure it out. If you can help someone see it in themselves, they won't forget.
100%. Yeah, totally.
So it's like I always thought about that when I was coaching and helping kids and trying to get them to do stuff. You can't just tell a kid to do this. Some kids might pick up on it. Most of them won't. If you can get a kid to want to do that thing and think that he's figuring it on his own because he is, but have him like, oh, I did that. You get those little wins and those little bits of excitement. And hey, I did that. I figured this out.
Confidence. Yeah.
Confidence builds and builds. And it's like, if you can be a good, psychologist, coach, podcast host, it's all kind of ties into like psychology with people. It's like, how do you make someone understand themselves better while also getting out the information that they already do know, but they've have like, oh fuck, why is that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Think deeper.
Yeah.
Have you had something really shock you on the podcast in terms of like someone opening up that you didn't expect, or someone kind of not being kind of what you thought they were in a good or a bad way?
Oh, heaps. Like,
don't judge a book by its cover.
Heaps. You know, like I've had stories from my friends and my family that I had no idea about that were completely shocking. Like my dad's childhood, you know, I heard it was bad, right? But what's bad? What's your version of bad, right? And he told me that like pretty much the child abuse, the torture from his dad, who was, you know, undiagnosed schizophrenic, alcoholic, came back from the war, tortured his kids, like tortured them, right? To the point where like one of dad's brothers killed themselves. You know, one of our other dad's brothers grabbed my dad and was like, "You're leaving the country." Like, it's just terrible. Like, raping his mum. Dad's going to sleep at night as a 15-year-old boy, and he's next door to his parents' room, and his dad's raping his mum as a 15-year-old. And they're the things that I used to clash with Dad heaps about his personality when I was 15, 16 years old going through puberty. Right? I'm thinking, Dad's a wanker. Dad is a wanker. And not knowing the trauma that he's gone through as a kid. Not knowing the changes that he's made. It's so easy. Like, how many times do you hear stories when, hurt people hurt people? That's the thing. Like, Dad could have gone into dealing with his trauma through drugs and alcohol. His dad was an alcoholic. Some of his brothers got into alcohol. Like, Dad could have easily gone down that road and dealt with his trauma through numbing the pain. Dad didn't bring any of that into our household. Our household was safe and peace, right? And now looking back on it, if we didn't have that chat, I wouldn't have so much sympathy and empathy for Dad. And I talk to him differently now, knowing what I know about his story. I empathize with him now. Instead of trying to like prove him wrong or clash with him or I'm better than you, I empathize with his train of thought, because it comes from a different place that I'll never understand in my entire life. Other stories.
You're trying to understand people more.
Yeah.
It's that thing. It's like when someone reacts really badly and you, instead of going, again, that self-aware enough to not react just as negative as what they have, but go, why are you like, not in a condescending way, but like, why are you like that?
Yeah.
Why are you doing that?
In a curious way rather than a judgment way. I want to know why you're like that. I want to know why you see that situation the way that you do. I mean, like I had a good friend, Sophie, who came on the podcast, and I didn't know too much about her story, but she's a very successful business owner, very out there extrovert, like so confident, a little bit intimidating, to be honest with you. Like she does not need help in anything in her life. She looks like she's got everything covered. That's my perception of it to begin with. We started chatting. I found out that she was raped when she was 19 years old. So she's carrying that with her. And then a couple of years before that, her mum committed suicide. And the way that she spoke about those situations and how it all happened and how it all went down and the person that she is today, I was complete shock that that she's handled herself with so much grace and like hasn't let that define her moving forward. Obviously, she's carrying some stuff, moving forward with relationships that she's working through, but to go through so much like traumatic things pretty much back to back and to look and to be so successful and not let that be part of her identity and not go back into victim and, start blaming people for certain things. And her outlook on life is remarkable.
Mm. It can go two ways, can't it? Like when really fucked up stuff happens to you, it can either destroy you or you can use it as fuel to become successful, but then you can also use it as a distraction to become successful.
I honestly think sometimes it's almost a distraction for her. Like she uses it like almost, not to prove people wrong, but like, yeah, it's a funny, we even talk about it now. It's like she uses it as like a bit of a fuel or motivator, like maybe to feel like I am someone. I've made myself into something, like almost proving you guys wrong. Like I am going to be something in my life. She's a bit of a workaholic and
yeah, same as my friend that her dad passed away, and I just remember when she said it. Certain things just land, and I just thought of all the things that I was doing to distract myself from the things that I had wanted to feel. I'm like, I don't want to feel that. That sucks. That's gonna hurt. It's gonna bring up some stuff. Look, I can go do this other thing. Look, people are praising me for this other thing. And then eventually, I always think about that. When this trauma or this crap that you've got or these issues or these things, like you have to carry them everywhere you go. Or you can just deal with them, suck for a little bit, and then be like, all right, that's done. And like, yes, it's always going to pop up in certain ways. But if you like go into the brunt of it head first, and kind of sort out most of what you've got going on there, and at least like sit in it for a little bit. You go, okay, this is this is something I needed to feel, and like just try and understand it instead of just going, okay, well, I could just put something else in front of me right now. And it's like you say, man, it's like how many people do you hurt in those situations? Like you broke up with your girlfriend because of shit that you hadn't looked at. Like how many people do you go and hurt and go, I hurt you because I hadn't dealt with the stuff that I need to deal with. I did that plenty of times in relationships where I knew I had stuff going on and I wouldn't open up and be vulnerable to people. And then because of that, I would self-sabotage it and then break up with them and be like, oh, it's just not working. And you're like, yo, you're just not sorting out your shit. And eventually you're just going to keep hurting people. What are you scared of?
I'm scared of not fulfilling my potential. And I say that, and it's like me constantly moving the goalposts. You know, you hear Matthew McConaughey saying, my idol or my hero is me 10 years from now. That's similar. I felt like I never reached my potential playing rugby. I felt like I always tried enough. I tried enough to seem like I was trying, or to seem like I put effort in. Just the bare minimum. But I don't think I gave it my all. I for too long, I thought I was always selling myself short in everything that I was doing. I was too afraid. I was too afraid to fully put myself out there. I was always too afraid to go 110%. I'll go 80 because 80 looks like I've done a bit of work, right? So that's always in the back of my mind that she's always saying, where's the line? Like, where do you feel like you've done enough? And I always say to her, you can always do more. You can always do more. And then I got to remind myself that even when we went on holiday and I'm laying down on the beach and I'm laying there going, I should be doing something with the podcast. Like I should be striving for something more. Like I should be doing something else. And it's just like having that ability to, when we're in the moment, when we're doing stuff that we've got to do stuff, do it to 110%. But then when you're on a holiday in a beach in Hawaii, it's time to relax. It's time to switch off and having that balance. But going back to that question is like, what are you scared of? Is like not fulfilling my potential as a human being.
But what is your full potential?
That's unknown.
That's what I mean. You said the goalpost.
Yeah, it's constantly moving the goalpost, but I'm constantly trying to get better every single day. I never had that mindset. I never had that mindset of trying to be better.
You're constantly fighting with a level of being content and then wanting more.
Yes. Yeah. And understanding, like knowing when to like take a step back and enjoy the moment. Like I think we spoke about like, you know, the top of one mountain is the bottom of another, you know, and for too long I would always, especially in this process when you're constantly looking ahead, you reach something, you know, I had a dream guest on like Joe Williams. He was the reason behind the whole podcast. Like he was the number one guest. Like I dreamt of having him on and chatting to him and telling him that like, you're the reason behind the podcast. Like you are the reason why all this has started. Like you're the reason my dad came on the podcast. If I didn't have this podcast because of you, I wouldn't have that conversation with my dad that changed everything, you know? And I didn't take the time to sit with it and celebrate that and be like, fuck, how good's that? It was always like that happened. I was like, all right, who's the next one? You know? And that's something that I need to understand, that like when you achieve a goal or achieve a dream or a, you know, you tick a bucket list off, sit with it, embrace it. Sit with that moment, because that's the thing that you work so hard for, and then you don't want to brush over it and just go for the next thing. Like it's okay to sit with it and embrace that moment.
And I saw it's like, I can't remember. I'm gonna butcher this quote now, but it's like chasing goals with no intention of actually catching them is where you're gonna find most of your happiness.
Yeah, I love that.
It's just like chase after things that feel good to chase after. If you get there or you don't, that shouldn't really matter. I like with my career, like racing, like winning or being the best in the world is obviously the ultimate goal. I never did that. I got close a couple of times, but if I could go back and I look at all the amazing fun times I had, like some of the fondest memories, man, were living in a van with 5 other people. We were eating at service stations and sleeping in the back of this van, and like I look at that, it's like I would do anything to go back and experience those things. And it's funny where I think we think our happiness will come from, where we think all this juice will come from, and then you look back and it's these minor things. It's just being with like your mates at a track, just riding on some random Tuesday in Italy or something, and just things that you put this idea. It's like, I'll be happy when I win this title. I'll be happy when I've got this money. I'll be happy when, and then you go look at it. It's like just happy and just like most of the times where I've felt the best I've ever felt has cost me near nothing. And we hype up that you need all these things and excitement and crazy things to find that happiness or find that excitement or whatever it is, and you're like, no, you don't really need that much.
No, I talk about some of my mates that we play footy with that like we've won grand finals together. We've played in front of like, you know, stadiums full of people, and we look back and go, yeah, they were fun, but how good was that? How good was that footy trip we had to Fiji? You know, that bonding trip that we had to New Zealand, or how funny was like that sevens tournament that we did in Manila that no one was there, and it was just like a bit of a boy trip, and we all bonded. Like they're the things that like really matter. They're the things that we think about and we laugh about, and it's been like 7, 8, 9, 10 years have gone by, and if I run into them, we'll still like bring it up and say how funny that was and how fun that was. And you know, I always thought like you'll always remember those grand final wins, or those man of the matches, or those trophies and everything, and they're great. They're good to look at on the wall at home. But when you actually get with those people that you played those games with, you actually don't talk about any of that. You actually talk about like the little training sessions in between, or the fun house sessions that you have, like bonding sessions, or all the fun trips you went away together, and all the friends that you meet through that. And they're the things that actually like mean the most to me.
Yeah, the small things.
The small things.
Yeah, you forget the big things pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you're dead and gone, how would you like to be remembered?
I would love for people to remember you as someone as a genuine individual that wasn't afraid to be himself. Unapologetically himself. Like I would love for people to remember you as someone that really, really tried his hardest and cared for people. You know, and I never would have, even me saying that now, that's new for me. But that's how I would like to be remembered.
And what advice would you give to someone that's wanting to be that same thing but isn't there yet?
One of the biggest things that I learnt was the ability to lean into yourself, lean into who you are, and not be afraid to do that. And it's like, it's the simple thing is, you know, the most important thing is to be yourself. And like, it seems like that's the hardest thing these days, is to be yourself.
But it's the most rewarded.
It's the most rewarded, absolutely. And it's like, the most rewarding part of this thing is if I didn't lean into myself, I wouldn't have this opportunity to sit here with you. I would have all these opportunities that I have in my life if I didn't lean into myself. So I would love for someone to lean into themselves earlier on in life. And by leaning into yourself, just figure out what you like and what you don't like, and ignore the rest as best you can. I know it's a young person these days. It's so hard to ignore all the temptations, all the distractions that you have in your life. But if you can really sit with yourself and hone in and figure out like, who am I? What do I like? What do I don't like? And really go all in on what you like. And all these, trust me, like, I thought it was bullshit. I honestly thought it was bullshit when you hear people like, the more you get to know yourself, all these doors start opening up for you. I actually thought it was bullshit. I was like, whatever. But honestly, like, the more I've leaned into who I am, what I like, everything starts aligning. All these doors that you didn't think was possible, all these doors are opening up in my life. And I love it.
I think it's just when you carry yourself that way, then people want to share other...
You attract it, same...
Yeah. You go, oh, actually, no, Elliott, that's a good person. You should meet that person. And people connect and grow from there. Got one more question for you, but what is something in your life that you are actively avoiding, that you know you're avoiding, that you either don't want to or you want to address?
Fuck. What am I avoiding? I'm probably, I'm actually probably like, there's probably a few things. I'm avoiding going deeper. I feel a little bit, there's a void where it's a spiritual thing, where I actually do feel it's a spiritual thing, to be honest with you. I feel like there's something there that I either need to address or need to unlock, and I feel like it's a spiritual side. So I'm kind of leaning towards like doing an ayahuasca ceremony, to be honest with you. I feel like there's something there that I've done so much work addressing certain traumas and certain things that's happened in my childhood. And by traumas, people often believe traumas like you see a car crash, or you see a traumatic event as someone dying, or you breaking a leg, or, abuse or something like that. But my traumatic events weren't anything like that. It was more so my needs weren't being met when I was a kid, not being heard, not being wanted, not being held, not being loved. There were some of my traumas that I carried on as an adult.
Not feeling enough.
That all stemmed from me being a kid. But I've done so much work, and I've chatted to family members and friends and psychologists and getting to the root cause of that. I'm very aware of like who I am and some of my triggers. But at the same time, I go home or I'm driving around and I feel like there's a little void that's still missing, that's still there. And I've talked to people that have sort of done ayahuasca ceremonies and done that sort of healing, and it does appeal to me. And I actually really want to do it. I actually really want to try it. Like even the sessions we had with the breath work that can really unlock those sorts of things that are happening deep inside. They're the things that actually scare the shit out of me. Even though all the work that I've done and the person that I am today is so different to who I was when I was, say, 20 years old, that going deeper still scares the shit out of me. Because deep down, I feel like there is still more to unpack. And I feel like I've gotten to this point where I feel like I'm okay. I'm good. I'm good relationship. I feel like I'm a good person. So I've just settled here because I feel like I'm a good person.
You're on the beach right now.
Yeah, man, I'm on the beach right now. But deep down, I feel like there's another thing. There's another thing I've got to unlock, right? So I'm in a comfort zone. I'm in Hawaii on the beach. Life's great. I've got sort of things sorted, looking outside in. But I still drive around sometimes, and I still sit by myself thinking, there's something else there.
Next challenge.
Yeah, there's something else there that I got to address.
I think it's when it feels right. It feels right. It's one of those things that sometimes when it finds you, or the situation presents itself, a bit more open to it. But yeah, it's certain things I think it comes back to how you feel and what you're trying to definitely get out of it. But it's one of those things, if sometimes things find you for a reason, you go, this was supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Go down that path. But yeah.
I think I've got to, I can get very complacent. I can do a fair bit of hard work and then think, yeah, I'm good now.
Yeah.
And I got to remind myself that the work doesn't stop. You can always, there's always something there that you can do. So,
but that comes back to that trying to be content as well.
Yeah.
Because I would battle with that constantly, with trying to live a life where I'm super competitive, world-class athlete, and then also just be content and happy. And it was this thing where it kind of ruined my career, because after COVID, I think I became a bit more of myself and realized there was more out there in the world, not only like locations, but just ways of being, mindsets, people. And I went from this person where if I didn't get a result that I wanted, I'd be so pissed off, but I'd use that anger as a fuel to then do better. When I became quite content with not doing as well as I thought I could, then it was a bit of a slippery slope, because if you're not, like, I would finish races and not do well, and I'd be like crying, man. I'd be upset. I'd be angry. I'd be on the I'd literally go start training that same afternoon. I'd get on a bike and go start doing hill sprints or something. Like I was
Really?
sometimes if you're pissed off and you knew you had something there and you just need to like get that anger out, I'd just go push myself. I'd race with a broken wrist once, like just because of my ego of like, I can do it. Like looking back at that and going like, what were you doing, man? Like even when I was trying to race with a concussion, I'm like, what were you doing? But I was so, like I was obsessed. I was obsessed with this thing. And if you want to become the best in the world at anything, you need to have a certain level of obsession. And you look at someone like Michael Jordan when he's in that documentary and he's still like caught up on it. Anyway, once COVID happened, didn't race for the year, kind of realized that I'm so much more than mountain biking. Like it was funny when I actually retired from mountain biking, everyone's like, how are you? I'm like, COVID was my real retirement. That was like my real like, who am I moment. And I guess I did a lot of like soul searching, as cringe as that probably sounds, and like did go exploring. In 2021, I was going to the Ukraine, I was going to Chernobyl, like I was traveling around, I was meeting new people, I was more of myself, I did crazy, like I found a bit more of myself and it felt good. But then the racing, I didn't care so much about it. Like I still wanted to do well, but I would definitely say I wasn't as annoyed if I didn't get the result that I really wanted. And that was kind of the beginning of the end for me. So I always wish you could go back and just like see what certain doors would look like if you walk through them instead of other ones. But
I play that game sometimes and I always think like, if I did this instead of that, where would have my life ended up? Right. And you can't, because I love every bit of my life now. And I wouldn't change any of it. Because it's funny how things like work out. Like I played a sevens tournament that I wasn't meant to play. I didn't want to play it. I wasn't meant to play it. I wasn't in the team. I was someone got injured and I happened to be in Brisbane. And my mate who was playing in the team was like, do you want to step in? Someone's pulled out. And I was like, fuck it, yeah, why not? Broke my leg, snapped, tib and fib got fractured, ankle dislocated, everything gone. Like, you know, it's a 12-month injury. Moved back to the sunny coast, met my fiance, like a couple of months after getting back to the sunny coast. You know, we're engaged, married next month. Got a house together, and I always wondered to myself, like, if I didn't play that sevens tournament, I would have been still in Sydney or would have been over in New Zealand. Like, I keep playing that. I go, well, where would my life ended up? Like, it was such a bad injury, but how good is my life now from it? You know, and do you find once you stop mountain bike riding that you needed another challenge?
Yeah,
because like when I stopped playing footy, I was like, yes, I can just relax, the pressure's gone, all that sort of stuff. And then that lasted for about 8 months. And then I was like, fuck, I'm not getting pushed. I'm not getting physically challenged. I'm not getting mentally challenged like that. I didn't know that that's what I was craving when I was playing footy, that I loved that competitiveness. I loved pushing myself to the limits. And I remember like watching my two really good mates run the Gold Coast Marathon, and I've seen them train for it, and they got really good times, and we're at the finish line and they see them running across the finish line, and I was so proud of them. And they were wrecked. Like they put everything into it. They got really, really good times. And I remember just like so happy for them. And I remember standing there looking around and everyone's like achieved something that they tried really hard for. And I remember going, what have I done since I stopped playing footy? Like, what have I actually pushed myself towards? Like, why? I didn't know that I was longing for that at all. And I remember like, telling Jordan, my fiance, one morning we were walking the dogs up at Coolum Beach, and I was like, I just let you know I'm going to run to Noosa and back. She's like, you hate running. I was like, I know. That's why I'm doing it. And she was like, that'll take you ages. And I was like, yeah, I know. And she's like, why? I just don't feel like I've achieved anything. I don't feel like I've pushed myself. I feel like I've been complacent. I felt like I've just found this safe zone and stayed in it. Like I didn't know. I used to get so anxious playing rugby, but I actually craved that pressure. That was a privilege, what Volk was talking about. Like I craved that privilege of playing in front of people and performing under pressure. When I stopped playing footy, I didn't have all that anymore. And I was almost like sort of in this baseline of like living life, just floating through space. And I was just like, oh. So I decided to do this run, and I went from my house in Maroochydore up to Noosa and back, and it's about 74 Ks or something. I think the furthest I run before that was 5 Ks. And she was like, do you want me to meet you up there or anything? And I was just like, yeah, you can meet me at like Noosa Surf Club, main beach there, and just bring me a banana and some hydrolytes or something like that. And like my dad called me and he's just like, why are you doing it for? And I was like, because I feel like I've got to figure out my limits. You know, I think Ned Brockman talked about it when he did his latest, he did like 3 or 4 days around a track, and he finished and he said, we are way more capable as human beings than we give ourselves credit for. We always sell ourselves short. And I remember like doing this run, and like the way out to Noosa wasn't so bad. Body started hurting a little bit, but it wasn't too bad. But the run back was horrendous. It was like the most mental games that I've ever had in my life. And it brought up so much like traumas of like a quitter. You always quit when things get tough, whether it's footy, whether it's relationships, whether it's hard, any hard times, Elliott would run. And I wanted to break that. I wanted to be like, no, like you're not that person anymore. I wanted to get rid of that old Elliott. And I remember like hobbling back and my knees were swollen, my ankles were swollen. And there was this like a period of like, Elliott would have given up way long ago. You know, you can't